everyone, happy Friday. Welcome back to the channel. Shout out to any new subscribers. Thank you for the support on the channel, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you enjoy this video. So you might be familiar with Jay Oliva, especially if you're watching this video. You might be familiar with him. He's a storyboard artist. He's worked with animated movies, shows, very well known in the comic book world, and also very well known in the Snyderverse community. He has shared several times on social media and in different interviews and podcasts and whatnot about things that he worked on in the past that didn't come to fruition in the Snyderverse or DC movies. He's shared some stuff about the Ben Affleck Batman movie that was, that Ben Affleck was supposed to direct, write, star in, do all of those things. And then he also shared some information about how Zack Snyder would have completed his universe, his total arc, what has now become known as the Snyderverse. We kind of have heard some things about this before in the past, that a Flashpoint movie would have kind of reset the DC universe and would have then paved the way for a new universe to start. Different cast, a whole new thing. So Jay Oliva has kind of given some insight information into maybe what that would have entailed. He said the Flash movies would have been intrinsically important to the future of the Snyderverse. Well, wasn't known as the Snyderverse then, with the Flash laying the groundwork for the big baddie of the DC universe, Eobard Thawne. So it would have been Professor Zoom or the Reverse Flash. I think of those as two separate characters, but I could be totally wrong about that as far as the lore. He said Rick's movie, referring to Rick Famuyiwa, who was the original director for the Flash movie, was laying the groundwork for Zoom as the big daddy of the DC universe. The DC creative added that it would have revealed that Reverse Flash had come from the future to basically mess with Barry, changing the word there, and audiences would have seen him pulling the strings and influencing the rest of the Justice League. His quote was, "It was Professor Zoom pulling the strings because he had come from the future to basically mess with Barry. In the Flash movies, Zoom would be the villain in the background, but also in the ancillary other films, you would see some of the influences of Zoom on the rest of the Justice League. This all would have culminated in a Flashpoint movie, where Snyder would have rebooted the universe and introduced a new cast." He goes on to say, at the end of Zack's Dark Side quadrilogy, like a 4-part movie or whatever it would have been, we would end up with a Justice League Unlimited version of the Snyderverse. And then you would flip it. You would do Flashpoint Paradox, or everybody whose friends are now enemies, and it's a world that you don't want to live in. You can reboot the universe and introduce a new cast that way, because after 10 years, the actors need to go on to something else. He's also very well known for working on the Flashpoint Paradox animated film, which is an amazing animated movie. He said that he wanted to capture the grimness of the comic, referring to the animated film, and was excited about adapting this as if it was a Marvel live action film. I wanted to really capture the grimness of the comic, but also lay the groundwork for adapting this as if it were a Marvel live action film. I just thought that would have been fantastic. Can you imagine Jason Momoa fighting Gal Gadot and then having that love story? And if you've seen Flashpoint Paradox, then you're familiar with that storyline that he's talking about. He said it's hard not to remember all of the missed opportunities, calling the whole experience so exciting but sad that it never came together. All of the missed opportunities, being a part of it was so exciting, and then having to shift gears and pivot, it's kind of sad. I would have loved to have seen it get to this point. Like I mentioned, there have been other reports before that this is kind of how, the DC universe that Zack Snyder started with Man of Steel would have come to a conclusion to then pave the way for a new universe. And that would have happened by now. For instance, if they would have stayed the course with the slate that they revealed at Comic-Con way back when there was a whole bunch of hype and they announced, BVS and Green Lantern and Cyborg and, all of the different solo movies and the different Justice League movies. The Flash at that point was called Flashpoint. There's a lot of, hype and excitement back then for DC. And if they would have stayed the course on that, granted, sometimes delays or things come up where movies get pushed back and stuff, but they would have eventually, like now, or a little bit, probably before now, got to a point where they would have been rebooting the DC universe by means of a Flashpoint movie. And it's interesting to hear how much of an influence Zoom or Reverse Flash would have had in the overall DC universe, which obviously, if you're doing Flashpoint, then he plays a huge, I mean, that's all pretty much because of him, right? But it's interesting to hear about how he would have influenced other movies as well, or Justice League members, and then kind of it all would have come together in a Flashpoint movie, and you kind of see like, oh, this was because of him, and this was because of him. And that would have been very interesting. Of course, Darkseid still would have been a huge big bad, the other big bad in the DC universe, but I think maybe that would have been more contained to the Justice League team-up movies. There was maybe some inkling or rumors that we might have seen Zoom or Reverse Flash in the Flash movie that ended up coming out in theaters earlier, this summer. We didn't see that. I watched it once in theaters, but if I remember correctly, I don't really remember seeing any Easter eggs or hints towards Zoom or Reverse Flash. I did mention in a video that, Andy Muschietti said after the movie came out, he talked about how, yes, in a sequel, we would find out that that's who killed Barry's mom, and then Barry would find that out and kind of pursue that, which obviously you expect that you have to bring Reverse Flash into a Flash movie, into a Flash story. You don't really see any hints or ties to that character in the Flash movie. There are traces of a Flashpoint story in the Flash movie, like clearly, he has to go back in time, things are not right. Of course, finding Supergirl, which in the Flashpoint movie, it's Superman, but, those kind of influences from Flashpoint, the animated movie, are there, and of course having a multiverse situation and things of that nature. It would have been really awesome to see all of that come together, and I think, I didn't have a problem with Michael Keaton's Batman coming into, playing a part in the Flash movie, but I think it would have been so much more interesting to see Thomas Wayne Batman, because that's who you see in the Flashpoint animated movie. I don't think people really had a problem with the fact that Michael Keaton's Batman, I think a lot of people it was cool to see him on screen again, and I think he did a great job, but I think that would have been a little bit more interesting and more unexpected for the characters in the movie. Like, it would have been more shocking, like, oh, this is Batman's dad. Well, the Batman that he knows, this is Bruce's dad. Just, it brings a whole nother, element to the Flashpoint story. And I think that if we would have had this version of a Flashpoint movie, we definitely would have seen Thomas Wayne Batman. The casting of Jeffrey D. Morgan as Thomas Wayne in BVS was spot on. He would have been absolutely perfect for Thomas Wayne Batman, and I think Zach has talked about that. Jeffrey D. Morgan has talked about it, and then how much they would all, have loved to see that happen. Hearing this stuff from Jay Oliva, he's worked a lot with Zach in the past, and they're also working on their Netflix project, Twilight of the Gods, together as well. If you follow him on Twitter or anything like that, he shares a lot, and he's very open and he's very honest and candid about a lot of these different projects, the ones that happened and ones that didn't. So I really appreciate that he shares a lot of this stuff. Always interesting to hear. Like I said, he also mentioned some things about the Ben Affleck Batman movie that, was going to happen at one point but didn't. And so make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I do post another video, because I plan on covering that on the channel as well. Thank you guys for the support. Don't forget to check out the merch link in the description if you're interested, and the short section of my channel. Appreciate you guys' support. See you soon.